Hello and welcome to my redesign of Venus from Monster High. This is the latest in an ongoing series of mine. I was very excited for this one, given that she has always been a punk character, and that is definitely my sort of fashion safety zone. It's definitely what I towards to migrate to. So starting off, I wanted to give her a very long tree-like body type, making her very tall and gangly and almost sort of having a very loosely humanoid shape, like she's a collection of vines and a trench coat was sort of the body type I was going for her. For inspiration board, I definitely wanted to take inspiration from Venus Flytraps and the animatronic from the Little Shop of Horrors movie, as well as some more floral, softer takes on punk. Since I definitely tend to lean more towards like 80s in my inspiration, I wanted to take some more sort of modern punk fashions into account for my design here. So for my first design here, I decided to start with this very sort of like flower petal-like hair, Liberty spikes, with this big long floral coat, with leaf-like cuffs around the edge, and adding some leaf details for the pants. I wanted to keep it somewhat simple, just doing some ripped high-waisted jeans there, adding some belts. For the second one, I wanted to try having her hair go more towards one direction, still keeping these sort of petal-like shapes to it. And then I came up with a sort of leather jacket romper situation, since it feels like, to me, rompers are very like gardeny, floral, summertime type of thing, and I thought it'd be interesting to combine that with the more typically punk considered fabric of leather. And I wanted to add some shades, because I had the idea for her face of having it be that she doesn't have any eyes, since Audrey 2 from the musical which she was based on does not have any eyes, at least visibly. So for the third look, I wanted to try something a little bit more flowy, a bit more femme, having a floral patterned sort of skirt and shirt there with a little sun hat and some mid-length boots. For the fourth look, I did very leaf-shaped spikes here, with some little shorts, some very spiky shoulder pads here, and trying to play around with some asymmetry and some more chunky boots so that she looks more rooted to the ground. But I did end up liking what I did with number 2 shoes a little bit better, where it's literally roots sticking out the bottom of her soles. Then for the fifth look, I wanted to try some more sort of natural textured hair, but with this big, crazy, very asymmetrical trench coat. And another thing I wanted to incorporate throughout her design was little elements to keep it looking ever so slightly spacey, since Audrey 2 is an alien from space. I wanted to sort of incorporate that very subtle element into her design. So here I'm just going ahead and listing out my favorite parts of each part of the design, just like which hairstyle I liked best, accessories, top, bottoms, shoes, etc., and jacket. I definitely have like standardized this process of coming up with 4 to 5 different mini thumbnail designs and then combining them all. I came up with it like my second video in the series, and it's really become a go-to for helping me design characters. So for my final redesign, I did the more sort of asymmetrical spikes on her head, and then I had the idea to keep the leather jacket romper but move the collar up more, so she has these really huge, super dramatic spikes coming out of her shoulders to really keep her silhouette looking more avant-garde and a-traditional and alien. I definitely also wanted to add some very big lapels to look sort of like the leaves coming off from around the head, and I wanted to add some detailing under the big shoulder pad spikes. Not only did I want these shoulder pads to be so ginormous that it sort of, again, throws off the silhouette and makes it look a little bit more non-human, but I feel like this is sort of the heels of a trend, but I wanted to have the idea of the spikes having that sort of red beading underneath them that makes it look like dripping blood, as well as having some painted flower details on the side of the leather jacket to keep it with the more modern floral punk theme. I also wanted to give her a necklace that has some chains and the flower of the Venus Flytrap on it. Interestingly enough, Venus Flytraps are native right around where I went to college, so I never got to see the Venus Flytraps in person because they are so incredibly poached that they were always gone as soon as they'd be planted in that area to try to restore it, or like be shown in the college garden, someone would poach it to sell it. So a little PSA to not buy Venus flytraps in stores, because they're, I'm sure, you know, most of them at this point are just sort of artificially gardened, but still it is very much an industry rife with poaching from natural environments. So back to the design, I wanted her fingers to be sort of like noodly and tendril-like, and I wanted her to have a very big mouth, but not a complete sort of like puppet-like hatchback Venus flytrap mouth all the way, because she is supposed to be humanoid and not a one-to-one copying. I also wanted to have her have these big wraparound goggles with these little starry space-like details in it as just a small nod to her being from space. So here is the line work. Total, this design took me, including the redesign time and the coloring time, 2 hours, 42 minutes, and 4 seconds. I'm not sure exactly how that compares to all the other ones, but it felt like it took me forever because I got super interrupted for a whole week, which is why this project is coming out so late. So I'm just thumbnailing out these colors here, and definitely wanted her palette to be very bright and bold and very in your face, and that's my favorite type of color palette to work with here. I also really liked the subtle sort of yellow and green that I had sort of going on here. So I was just there testing out my color palette on the lineup to see how she would stand out, blend in. Wanted to go with a sort of darker, very like stem green color for her skin tone, and have vines wrapping up all around her body. This was very tedious to color, but I feel like I've drawn Venus a lot. I'm used to using this exact technique for coloring it in, so. For her boots, I wanted to keep the silhouette of them very sleek and simple so that it draws the eyes up, so as she looks sort of like a Venus flytrap in the way that it is very much like a pretty plain leafy stem, and then all of a sudden at the top there's this big like mouth with teeth. Had to stop myself there from going into the evolution of Venus flytraps again. I just think it's a very interesting plant, and having a sort of local connection to it too definitely brought a lot of inspiration to this design and a lot of passion. I definitely wanted to keep her shaved side along with the Liberty spikes, so I ended up axing the half on the back of the spikes. For her hair color, I wanted to do this like bright yellow with some dip dye green spikes at the top. I wanted to also incorporate her having textured hair on one side on her shaved side, but still the very like straightened Liberty spikes at the end, because I feel like that was more typical of how punks of color in the 80s would do it. So just again doing more green, yellow, pink all throughout her design. Wanted to have it be a lot of these cool greens on the sort of stem area, and then have the spikes and the blood and the very big lapels have that warmer color to again mimic the look of a Venus flytrap. For her earrings, I just did some simple square spikes, and I put a lot of little detail buttons into her jacket, and it's always fun coming up with lots of little pins. I always want to like add more and more and more, but at the same time I'm also aware that the amount that I have here probably looks pretty busy from afar. I have a lot of little notes in this design too, since I had a lot of ideas for little details. I wanted her little turtleneck tank top there to have this checkerboard pattern to sort of refer to the 60s era that the musical is set in, and I just put that in a very like bright sort of scarlet red orange color to clash with the neon green that's throughout her palette as well. For her boots, I wanted to do these big zippers up the sides with the rips in the knees to again emulate the very sort of classic ripped knee jean look in a lot of punk fashion, but I wanted to have these zippers be going through those to sort of contrast it a little bit more, add something a little bit different to it. I also ended up last minute in my sketch changing the buckle straps on the back side of her belts into these little leaf shapes to again theme it more. And her shoes I'm really proud of. It mimics the look of the animatronic from the movie and the general just Audrey 2 look, where it's terracotta plant like breaking apart with roots sticking out the bottom, so I thought that was very fun. And also like the implication that that is her like roots bursting through the bottoms of her shoes that she can walk around on. So just doing the checkerboard pattern that I mentioned here. Have her I Heart Earth patch, lots of little identity patches, Eco Punk, some little triangles and studs, some little teeth, some Venus Flytrap pin, obviously, some vines. I also ended up changing her nail color. I originally had it be that there was just like one nail that had a sort of like interest color to it, but then I changed it because I had the idea of instead having her thumb be painted green as a reference to having a green thumb. I thought that'd be a cute little detail. So just adding the last little bit shading here. The background is a picture of pitcher plants that I took, which are also native to the area and not as heavily poached, so I actually got to see them. I wanted to, of course, keep her palette very neon to spite all the sort of like dark green leather throughout her outfit. I wanted to keep it very bright and not necessarily like earth tones, but like neon earth tones, if that makes sense. I also wanted to add these little baggy pockets on her romper that I ended up including in a years old Venus redesign that I did before I really started like redesigning the characters, just sort of like drawing them in my style with my takes on them. So I wanted to sort of add those back into her outfits as an homage, because I like the idea of her having pockets to carry stuff around. So just doing the last little bit of shading here, making sure everything is highlighted and shaded, messing with the levels of everything. We're just about to the end here. I'm very excited to show off the finished project because this felt like I got to very much sort of like step into my comfort zone and at the same time really push the design a lot further than I usually do, because I feel like most of the time I'm designing Monster High characters I try to keep it like very fashionable but somewhat realistic for a teen to wear, whereas for her I wanted it to be very alien. Again, vines in a trench coat was sort of like my idea for the silhouette here. So she's all done, and here is the reveal. I am really happy with how she turned out, and I really love the yellow that ended up working its way into this palette, because I feel like every time I design a Monster High character at this point, they're becoming green. I didn't know it was my go-to color as much as it is, but having a character who is sort of baseline green and there's no way to get around that, I was really happy with the way yellow and red ended up sort of working into this palette here, because I didn't go in with that expectation of having those be pretty predominant colors. So here is the comparison between Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, and my take. Mine is obviously quite different. It's always so strange seeing how different it is. Like, I always thought in my mind, I would always imagine Venus to be very neon, but seeing it here next to my design, she's actually quite pale in comparison to tonally. So it's definitely a lot of fun seeing just how far I was able to push the punkness of her design, because again, that is a fashion subculture style that I am really interested in, especially the history of and the development of, and the ability to really push boundaries with it. So I was really happy to get to do that with this design. And then on the lineup here, I decided to have her really tallest, since Audrey 2 is ginormous. And I also felt like it helped with sort of alien-like look. I love how she's so neon, she almost looks a little bit washed out in the lineup, and when I look at them all, I kind of almost feel like she might be my favorite redesign that I've done. I didn't really think that going in or designing her, but when I see the whole lineup, my eye is really drawn to her. She's definitely the most my aesthetic. So here's the wrap-up picture again. I hope you enjoyed this Venus McFlytrap redesign. I really enjoyed getting to do her. And up next will be Rochelle. Make sure to follow me on these platforms where I post art at least 4 times a month, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!